Welcome to What's the Point? A weekly discussion of truth, realities, challenges, theological and philosophical views, national policies, and international concerns. Welcome to What's the Point? We're actually going to be starting a new series. It's going to be a 4-part series about the story of a missionary, really, dad, and his time in Saudi Arabia. But it's going to be a 4-part series where we kind of go in depth into his experience there. But our first episode today starts with a little bit of a background to kind of understand why why he had to go through what he went through there. So today's topic is about Saudi Arabia and the freedom of religion in the 1980s. So pretty much my first question is, what is the state of Saudi Arabia in the 1980s in terms of religion? Was there such a thing as freedom of religion? Kind of give us a background of what it looked like at the time.
My description of this is based on all the knowledge and experience I had. My answer to that is based on my experience and my knowledge, inside knowledge, when I was in Saudi Arabia. Especially that I work with a company that's owned by the royal family. So I have better information on what's reality. Now, during those times in the 80s, there is no such thing as freedom of religion in Saudi Arabia because the Saudi Arabia, the king of Saudi Arabia, is also considered to be the custodian of the two holy mosques, the two most precious sites for the Muslim religion, Makkah, which we call Mecca, which is called Makkah, there, what we call Mecca, and Medina. These are the sites of two holy mosques that Muslims go for pilgrimage. And the custodian of those mosques is the king of Saudi Arabia. And then they have what you call Hajj. Hajj is a yearly thing that Muslims have to do to visit Makkah or Mecca. And
that they have to do that yearly, you said?
Yeah. Now, all the Muslims around the world will have to go to Saudi Arabia at least once in their lifetime. It's one of the 7 pillars of Islam. So if you can afford it, you have to go there at least once in a lifetime. Some people go there like every 2 years, every 4. Some Muslims want to die there in Makkah. So that's a very big thing. And so technically, it is the seat of the one. Remember, the Muslim religion or Islam has 2 sectors. The one that is close to the Saudi Arabia, I can't remember the name now. Whether there are 2 kinds of sects in Sunni, and the other one is the one in Iran. Shia. Okay. So Sunni, the seat of that is Saudi Arabia, and it's that's the reason Christians cannot even enter Makkah territory. So if you are not, you cannot even step on it. Even
is it a city or what is it? Is it like a build? Like, is it like an enclosed
like a
compound?
It's a town. Yeah, it's a town or a city. That the guarded, only Muslims can enter. And it is for that reason that they do not allow the practice of other religions. Now, you can practice it personally in your own room, in silence, but no public gathering. Wow. Not even 2 or 3 people talking about religion at that time was allowed in Saudi Arabia. It was considered a crime. More so if you organize and this together, it's considered a threat to national security.
Oh, wow. Okay. So pretty much you can't really like do it in public, um, with anybody around. Like you said, two or three talking about it is already considered like gathering.
Yeah. Well, if two or three of you talk inside your room where nobody can hear, technically that's not a problem. But the moment it becomes
Mm,
public, you talk about it in the office, you talk about it in the mall, or any public, you cannot discuss religion, uh, other religion.
besides
No,
Islam.
Islam, yes. Besides Islam.
Mm,
Already at the time when I was there, I think this is not fair because Islam can be practiced anywhere in the world. There is no, like even inside whatever Rome, this is the seat of the Catholic Church. Muslims are
right.
allowed to enter there. And, I think you can even in Rome, I think there are mosques as well,
Yeah.
where
And in the
the
80s,
Vatican
I
is.
think there was already freedom of religion, at least in the rest of the world.
Yes, yes,
Not
except communist countries.
Not the Middle East much, but the rest of the
Also the communist countries, like China,
oh yeah,
North
communist
Korea,
China.
yeah, South Sudan, uh, communists, they don't also allow religion.
Um, do you have something to add, Josh? Like, have you, when you were like kind of reading about this, did you kind of notice or something pop up during, I guess, in the term of freedom of religion for Saudi Arabia?
I guess the main thing was like the harshness of
Whatever it.
like the penalty if you do convert a Muslim. You know, if you convert
Mm,
a Muslim to them, you know, to a different religion, then it's a big punishment in Saudi Arabia in the 80s. So
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, it
so
was punishable by beheading.
by beheading, but that was in the 80s, right?
Yeah,
Um, so I guess we talked about like the official religion in Saudi Arabia is Islam, as we've discussed. So do so the Islamic laws that they have, because I was doing some research on this topic, um, and the research that I've found, pretty much ties back to what you said about you can do it in your own room or like in private, but you can't do it in public. So like the pretty much the next question I had was so in the research I was doing, it was showing that the freedom of religion is not recognized or protected under the law. And it's severely restricted in practice, which is what Dad was already saying that, and what you said, Josh, where the punishments are very harsh. And the the legal system, that this is the kind of goes on to the next question I have. It says that the legal system is based on the government's application of Islamic law. So how do the Islamic laws apply to the people in Saudi Arabia at the time? Like, are the Islamic laws only for the citizens of Saudi Arabia, or does it apply to everybody, like to include foreigners?
my understanding, I might be wrong, but my understanding is that the initial investigation is under non-Islamic parameter. But when a crime is established, the trial proper will be using Islamic laws. Example, there is no such thing at the time as you have to be for you to be convicted, you have to be presumed innocent, and you will be convicted only beyond reasonable doubt. No such thing. When you are reported to have committed a crime, immediately you will be arrested and you will be presumed guilty unless proven
Mm,
otherwise. It's the other way around. In the democratic states, like the US, Europe, and maybe even the Philippines, if you are arrested, you are presumed innocent unless proven guilty. So the person who is accusing must prove that you are guilty. Now, in Saudi Arabia, at the time, it was different. When you are arrested, you are already guilty. You prove that you are not. You prove
So
that you're innocent.
is that
Now, yeah.
in the back in the Bible's time? Is that the same? Like, what were the Jews back then like? Are you proven guilty first? I know this is a little bit separate from that, but I'm just trying to compare, like, in a Jewish standpoint, were they
Uh,
also that way or no?
I really have not studied that. So that's a good thing to ask. Maybe we can research.
Yeah.
But reading from the practice of the Old Testament, it looks like by two or three witnesses accusing you, you are already presumed to be guilty.
Mm.
Looks like if there are witnesses, two or three, against you, the presumption of guilt is already there. I might be wrong, but I've read that a lot in the Old Testament.
Yeah. I mean, it was not
Now,
really in my outline. I was kind of just when you mentioned that you're presumed guilty and then you have to prove yourself like innocent, it kind of just made me think about like how the Bible they were, it was a
yeah,
little bit different back then too. And the punishments were also hard, but that was thousands of years ago as opposed to like in the 80s,
yeah.
which is not really that
But
far back.
yeah. But then I think they process you. So if you are already presumed, uh, I mean, if you cannot sort of prove otherwise, you will wait for schedule now to be tried to the Sharia court, which is the Islamic court. And
Mm.
once you now are in the jurisdiction of the Sharia court, then the Islamic law apply. I'll give you an example. When somebody kills someone, the initial stage of arrest and investigation is done by the police. And the rules are, example, when you are arrested, you are put to a secluded place. So you can even have a lawyer.
You cannot have a lawyer.
Uh, then you can have a lawyer after some time, but we will first interrogate you, and you cannot say, "I need a lawyer." You can
Mm.
make the at the time as a defense. You can be interrogated without a lawyer, and you cannot say, "I claim my right to self-incrimination. I want to remain silent." That is not there as well at the time. So you
Mm.
have to answer because they will say, why? If you say that you want to be silent, you, you want to have a lawyer, it will just aggravate circumstance. It's
That
an
means you're
aggravating
really
circumstance.
guilty.
You're really guilty. Why do you need a lawyer? Why do you need to be silent when
Mm.
you can just so what they do is that when somebody reports crime uh, or a violation, uh, normally if it is a criminal violation, uh, the police will come. If it is a minor religious violation, example, because at the time, a man looking at a woman in a park more than few minutes, staring at a woman in a park is considered religious violation. And so when you are
Mm.
reported, a religious police will go to you and will whip you outright.
Like they beat you right there and then?
Yeah. With example, if they call it mutawa, this a religious police. So if a woman said that man has been looking at me, staring at me for minutes, the religious mutawa will come to you, and if he thinks that you need to be whipped with like 8 hits, then you go down and be whipped in 8 times.
But what if, like, with even if there are no witnesses, like, as long as someone reports it, they will do it right away?
Yeah, especially if the one reporting is a Muslim, and the one being reported to is non-Muslim.
Mm.
Comes to like if you get, go to jail as far as somebody from out of the country, how does that work? Do you have to talk to like the embassy of the Philippines? What do you have to do? How do you get? How do they have a part in getting you out and stuff?
No, when you are like a foreigner and you get arrested, the protocol is that they will inform your employer and that the employer will inform your embassy. And the embassy sends a lawyer if the embassy has lawyer. Not all embassies have. Like in the case of Jeddah, there is no embassy, but it's a consulate. So if the consulate has a lawyer or a labor representative, they will go and look for you.
But that's not immediate. It takes a while to do that, right?
Yeah, it's not immediate. Yeah, it's not immediate.
Yeah. And so, okay, so they'll pretty much it goes from you to your employer, and then your employer to the embassy, and then the embassy will send a lawyer. So it's not like quick, like how the US is. If you just say, I need a lawyer, yeah.
Yeah. Like in my case, I think someone was looking for me after 40 days.
What do you mean? Like,
When uh, in other words, when already because I have office mates who already knew about who were also arrested, so they already reported to the office. The prince, my boss, knew about it, but the embassy and they were already reported in the Philippines my case, but still they 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 were only able to send someone to sort of try to talk to me, which I wasn't able to talk to personally about 14 days after I was in prison.
oh, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So then at that point, like some people might not even make it 2 weeks, right? Like to wait for a lawyer to come talk to them. Like
Yeah.
if they've gotten tortured or whatever, like they may not even have 14 days by the time the lawyer comes.
Uh, the-
Go
it's
ahead.
in my case. When you are investigated, it's not like during office hours. No. The investigators will look at the like,
Oh, so if they want to go like 20 hours, they can.
yeah. Example, when we were first arrested, with uh, all my office mates and all those who were doing Bible study with me in the office. We were all rounded out. Up, we all went to the police, about 12 of us, or about 10 of us. And we were beginning to ask questions. And then I immediately admitted that I was the leader and that I told them that it is not wrong to talk about that in the office because we are just doing it in our department. So don't blame them because I am their manager and they just follow what I said. I take the
Mm.
blame. So in 2 hours time, all the rest, all of us in fact, all of us were on the first arrest, all of us were able to go home
Oh, including
because
you.
yeah, including me, first time because in the investigation it looked like it's a small department of Filipinos talking about the religion during their break. So I think it's not much of a problem.
Okay.
So that someone immediately admitted me, said that I was the boss, and I allowed the people to do that, and it looks like it's okay. But they continued. Remember, my other assistant pastor was arrested because he imported Bibles. They could not connect that to me. What they can connect
Is that he
was
works with you?
that this guy communicated with me, or I invited him to join an activity. So that's the only connection. Nothing to do with imputation. So that is
Oh,
the
but
reason I
then
was praised. So the first one who was who was sort of suspected or arrested already what my assistant, I didn't know that then, what my assistant pastor was Indian, who imported Bibles. So because of the importation of Bibles, he was arrested. But his house was searched. There was one letter note from me. Let's meet at something like this, and they were able to place me. So that was the only evidence they have against me.
So
And I said,
was
well,
that the
he's a,
evidence they had to call you in?
sorry.
The letter that they found in the assistant pastor's belongings was the only evidence they had to call you in the first time or the
Yes,
second time?
the first time. And so I said, yes, it's a friend of mine. And we do prayer meetings. And I even said, because our friends allowed us to pray when you guys are praying. So long as it's prayer time, so you not also our prayer time, Christians, according to our book, so it's a free. And so I told them,
Mm.
I told all these other people, we can do it. So they said, oh, okay. So, so we were all set free. Now, but they continued the search for that guy. And then our house of worship was identified.
Ah.
And when they entered and they raided the church, they were all full of documents, Bibles, worship materials, and all of that. So that one truckload of evidence that I was arrested and then that's me.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, and I know we'll kind of like get more into the details of that in the next episode. That was kind of like a
Yeah,
snippet of like how it started, but like the next episode we kind of like go into detail as to like what all transpired, kind of like a step by step. Um, but that story right there kind of brings me to my next question, which is if you can quickly kind of tell us about the repercussions of practicing for a non-Muslim, like practicing a non-Muslim religion. Like obviously you get arrested, and then Josh mentioned harsh punishments, but like, what does that look like in real life?
well, maybe I can put my own thinking. I was then about 26 years old at the time, uh, coming coming from a context of an activist in school. Uh, so I was a non-conformist. So my personality was non-conformist. I was a critical thinker, and I questioned things that I think was wrong. So what I noticed, what I was told, that it is not allowed in the briefings to practice religion in Saudi Arabia. I said, okay. It is not allowed also to drink alcohol in Saudi Arabia. It's not allowed to do gambling in Saudi Arabia. It's not allowed to womanize in Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
There is even no movie theater. So no entertainment. So we were all told that. But when I arrived in Saudi Arabia, the Filipinos uh, that I knew were making their own liquor in their rooms.
Mm.
So it was not supposed to be allowed. But they were buying sugar, uh, grape juice, and they were brewing alcohol. I said, wow, that's not allowed. Why are you doing that? You know, if they can have trust. Okay. And then they were gambling. They were gambling there, betting in room and in quarter. I said, that's not
Mm.
allowed. And they said, oh, if they can catch us. And then even some of them were making the rooms like a place for dating.
Like a
Where
brothel?
a bottle that you rent it out because the boyfriend wants to date a nurse for like 30 minutes or something
Oh,
like
like a
that.
motel.
So yeah, like a motel. And they were doing that. And then I said, well, all the things that were not allowed were can be done. So I said, and they were all bad things to my mind. I said, why would I do
Mm.
a good thing that is allowed, that is not allowed? So I first sort of asked my boss, during prayer time, are we allowed to pray? Also, I said, why not? go ahead. So long as it's a prayer time,
So
because that's the benefit of the Muslims. And when
is your boss more like liberal or more like understanding? You know what I mean? Like, why would he allow that?
yeah, uh, my boss then, I think, was a fresh graduate of one of the schools in the US or the UK, I think. And so he was more, more level-headed. He was young,
Mm,
maybe in his 30s, drives a Rolls Royce, in sandals to the office. So when he was asked, why not? So long as you don't eat company time, because the Muslims
mm,
have how many minutes to pray. So why we do not also pray to your God? So I started
okay,
that
okay,
2 weeks ago also.
okay.
And then I started inviting them for Bible studies in my house. So there's nothing wrong if inside your house.
Right.
If nobody else there, okay? Uh, but then it grew. Next time you will know, it has become big.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's where the
I think
problem.
this is a good setup for like the next episode where we kind of like this is the main topic. Like this is kind of a snippet, but um so repercussions are pretty much bad. Like you get imprisoned. I mean you get arrested and then you get jail time, you get questioned and
Oh
all
yes.
that, right? With no due
And,
process.
and when you and when your neighbor reports that you're noisy, you get arrested. Uh, Also, when you bring a Muslim and convert to Christianity, you and the Muslim will be beheaded.
Mm, wow, that's big. Which is in the
So,
80s, you know, like it's not
so
that
that's
far
really
back.
scary. That's scary.
Yes, the question that I have is that did you know at the time that because you had some conversions of Muslims to, obviously Christians, did you know at the time that that was the case?
Um, in the initial months, there were no Muslims yet. But as we grew, there were Buddhists coming in, there were Muslims coming in, and I was already warned, but I didn't know that beheading at the time was the punishment for it. I
Mm,
knew it was a severe punishment, uh, and we all knew that we can be imprisoned and deported for what we were doing. But we thought that we will take the risk. We just make sure that we are not caught.
So when did you know that it was beheading?
But I was already in jail.
Gotcha.
oh wow. Okay. Yeah, which is kind of scary because like I think the risk would be different. Or I mean like you would kind of like think harder to I mean you knew you could be in prison, but then you're like, "Oh, I'll be in prison and then deported." So I just go home. But not
No,
necessarily
no, no, no. Not in prison and deport and go home. Uh, we were told that you might be in prison for about 12 years before you are sent home.
oh wow. Okay, but then you still did it.
So
Yeah.
that's so in your mind at the time it was like worst case scenario is 12 years.
Yeah. In our minds, the worst case scenario is 12 years or more. That's minimum, and then you will be deported.
Yeah. I mean, the 12 years is still a lot though. You know what I'm saying? That it's not like it's not something that you could be like, oh, it's only 12 years. You know, that's still pretty bad. Um, so I guess
Although we heard, but we didn't take it seriously, that some already warned us that a Muslim turning because when we were already in church, before I was arrested, there was one Muslim, uh, Pakistani, who converted, and then he disappeared. And then we asked, why is he not attending now? Because uh, his parents said, if he will be caught, he will be beheaded. So we already knew about 6 months after we started. Sorry about that. That it could be beheading
that
of what we knew of the person who converts. We didn't know that it includes the people who will convert him,
Gotcha.
who the people who what?
who will bring him to Christianity. It's also to be beheaded.
Oh, so you were thinking like, oh, that sucks. Like that guy's gonna get beheaded, but you didn't think that you were gonna get beheaded also.
Yeah, yeah. At the time. So we know that we will be imprisoned. So we're all ready for the imprisonment, that in case we were caught.
Good point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the final question I have, I guess we've been talking about the 80s. Um, the question I have, and I'll give a little bit of a background because there's an article I read when I was doing the research for this, and this is recent, like 2024. Um, but the question I had was, has there been a change in the way non-Muslim religions can be practiced in Saudi Arabia now? So that's the question I have. And then I'm going to give you guys a little summary of an article I read from the Washington Post. The article was dated like March 24, 2024. So like last month. Um, on March 3rd, 24, there was a delegation from the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom that had a visit scheduled in Saudi Arabia. They were scheduled to tour the original home of the royal family and the location of a UNESCO site. Before entering the site, the Saudi authorities asked the commission chair, Abraham Cooper, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, to remove his kippah while there or any time he was in public. Cooper refused, and the delegation ended up cutting their visit short and left Saudi Arabia. Cooper was interviewed after the visit, and he said that the Saudi officials had told him that they can't allow public display of any other faith other than Islam, and they were escorted off the premises. So the commission's vice chair was, I assume, is a Christian because it's Reverend Frederick Davy, and he's a senior advisor at the Union Theological Seminary. So I assume Christian. Also said he was leaving because if the rabbi was leaving, which is the commissioner of which is the chairman of the delegation, he was also going to leave. He said that so this is different. So that was when they were visiting the UNESCO site and the home of the royal family, but they had no problem. So this was towards the end of, I don't know what day of their visit, but prior to this visit to the royal home, he had no problems wearing his kippah at the previous meetings they had. So they had a meeting with the Saudi Foreign Ministry, Interior Ministry, and the Human Rights Commission, and they were able to just wear. He was able to wear. People knew he was a Jew. He had his kippah on, but as of now, the U.S. State Department states, so like if you were to look up in the U.S. State Department, what are the like rules in Saudi Arabia, it specifically says that Islam is the official religion of the country and is present in all aspects of life in Saudi Arabia. Saudi authorities do not permit criticism of Islam or Muslim religious figures, including on social media. The government prohibits the public practice of religions other than Islam, and public display of non-Islamic religious articles such as crosses and Bibles is not permitted. And this is written as of 2024, as of last, this article was written. But when I did a little bit of research, I guess Saudi Arabia now, I mean, from what you've said before in the 80s and kind of now, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's something different. When I was reading, it says that I guess Saudi Arabia has a 2030 vision, like a goal by 2030 to have a more new and vibrant society, which is why they're allowing, like, this is a commission for U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. So, like, why would they be allowing them in the country if they don't have any, plans of kind of integrating it? So, I mean, I think it's stepping in the right direction. And I guess the king of Saudi Arabia launched an interfaith dialogue initiative to bring leaders and followers of various faiths together for discourse and to intensify a national dialogue to promote tolerance and moderation. So that's what I've read recently. I mean, there was that issue, and a lot of people were saying that like the Saudi officials kind of made it worse because they're trying to like integrate slowly, and the officials doing that to the commissioner of the Jewish guy kind of made it worse and made him look bad because I guess they're really trying to be more open. but I don't know if you know of anything different now, like what Saudi Arabia looks now. Because I know you're not allowed to go in there, but
I can get reports from the people there. I was told it is not as strict as before, but there are still no Christian churches or Christian buildings allowed. Unlike Qatar or Dubai, where you can even post a sign Alliance Church or something like that.
mm,
I think now they are more lenient. You can now meet in homes, in buildings, provided you do not disturb your neighbors.
mm,
And it still has to be discreet. But you don't have the fear anymore of being imprisoned so long as you do not violate public disturbance laws. But you cannot build
gotcha.
a church. Yeah. With a sign, no crosses, nothing like that. So you can gather. You can gather. So and make it like a social family religious gathering. They are less strict now, unlike before that they really guard and follow you.
What about converting?
No, the converted is still there because that is Islamic law.
So pretty
So
much
technically,
you're allowed to
you
practice for
can,
yourself, but
yeah,
you still can't convert.
yeah. So you're allowed to practice as Christians, but don't proselyte Muslims into your Christian faith or Buddhists. Don't get the Muslims to you. You practice your own. They give you freedom to practice your religion, but do not poach into our congregation or our
Mm,
Muslim territories. So what is not allowed is to bring Muslims to your religion. Now, that is still not correct because Muslims around the world convert Christians, Buddhists, and others to Islam.
yeah,
So
but
my
I mean,
question is why? Yeah, why is there a double standard? Why in your country you restrict Christians for inviting Muslims to be Christians, but in other part of the world you intentionally convert Christians to Muslim?
What's the purpose of the push for religious tolerance if you still can't convert a Muslim?
the push for religious tolerance, I think, is so that because before dad had to ask his boss specifically, like, hey, can we pray while you guys are praying? Right? Like, it's not a common thing. Like, the people didn't ask that. That wasn't like a normal thing. But now it's a little bit more accepted that, like, oh, me and my family are just going to my house. Like, it's not as big of a secret. Like, back then, it was really, really underground. Like, you cannot even talk about it that you guys are going to meet. So it's been many years.
So what's the punishment now? What's the punishment now? Maybe in 2030, what's the punishment if you convert a Muslim into a Christian?
I don't
No, the
know that.
punishment now is just still beheading. What is that?
I
What is
don't know
that?
the answer.
What's the punishment if you convert? No,
In
I
2030.
think, no, I think in 2030 or any time, according to according to the Islamic law, to the Islamic law, I was told according to their because it's not just in Saudi Arabia, uh, technically, where the Sharia law can be implemented. I think if you convert to other religions, it's still punishable by beheading or death.
So what's the purpose of religious tolerance then? The king's trying to do?
No, religious tolerance to them is that you can practice your religion. You're tolerated to practice your religion amongst yourself.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
because before
don't get
it was not.
don't get our message.
Yeah, which I think that
Yeah.
it's still
No,
kind of a.
but what I was saying that's the yeah, but what I was saying that's double standard because then the Muslims around the world around the world, if that is the case, should not also go to Christians or Buddhists and invite them to be Muslim.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even in Saudi Arabia, they even have a very strong invitation for Christians to be Muslims by giving them money if you turn to be Muslim. They give you promotions, jobs, benefits if you turn to be Muslim. They pay you to be Muslim in Saudi Arabia. So why now are you allowed to convert a Christian to a Muslim, but you will not allow a Muslim to convert to Christian? That's double standard. That's what I am actually questioning.
So
Until
that
now.
standard is more in like Arab countries, because like in the US, because I guess in US law, you cannot behead someone for converting a
Yeah,
Muslim. But
yeah, Kelly,
technically,
because in the US, the Sharia law
doesn't
cannot
apply.
o- cannot overturn the American law. Now, in the Philippines, non-criminal offenses. In the Philippines, if you're a Muslim, the Sharia law can apply. In the Philippines, if you're a Muslim guy, and then you are charged with adultery by, say, the husband or say the husband of a woman that you cohabitated. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
then you say, no, I'm a Muslim, so I am entitled to 4 wives. You will not go to jail for 17 years. But if you're a Christian, you will go to jail.
Also in the Philippines, non-criminal
Because the Sharia court in
violences,
the
Sharia law can still apply on certain cases.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Now there are countries that allow that, but the US does not. I think France allows it, and other countries. So the question, Josh, of whether, uh, example here in the Philippines, if you will be tried and 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 by another Muslim in the Sharia court, and you are uh, example, a Muslim that turned to be Christian, and they will be forced the issue of trying you in a Sharia court, you will be sentenced to death.
In the Philippines?
Yeah, yeah. But it never happened because the defense always of the person who was accused is that I'm not under your jurisdiction. I'm a Christian now. You see
Oh,
the legal defense.
yeah. Yeah, okay.
Because the law, yeah. So when you get yourself subjected to the Sharia law, example, adultery, you accuse me of adultery, I get the shelter of the Muslims, then there is no adultery because I can have 4 wives. But if you will accuse me of, of proselyting or that I have changed to Christianity and you sentence me to death, you cannot do that. I'm a Christian now. That's not your jurisdiction. It becomes a jurisdictional issue. Not in Saudi Arabia, not in countries like Indonesia or
Because over
Nigeria or
there,
wherever
their
where it's
Sharia
Muslim.
court is the highest law of the land.
It is the law of the land.
Mm.
Like Malaysia, Indonesia.
So in
So
Yeah, so
Malaysia
in
and
the
that's the
Philippines,
Indonesia,
there's
you
like a
can't.
loophole.
So in Malaysia or Indonesia, you can't practice Christianity either.
yeah. In Malaysia, you have to be very, very careful. In Indonesia, there are states, not all, it's a bit liberal, but I still heard that in Indonesia, you can be beheaded if the Sharia court decides that you should be beheaded for transfer. But they are more lenient. There are legal defenses.
Mm.
Unlike,
That's
unlike
crazy.
Saudi Arabia, where it's really, yeah, it's really like you cannot just do any legal defense.
Yeah, I feel like in other countries there, because it's a little bit more liberal and like they're a little bit more open, you can get through like the loopholes of like being a Christian. Like in the Philippines, your loophole is, well, you can't try me now. I'm a Christian now.
Yeah,
So,
something like that.
yeah.
In Indonesia, I think that also applies. Now, the difference is that other countries are poorer countries, and therefore they can be pressured by the international community. Now, who can pressure Saudi Arabia? They have a lot of money. I think 1/4 of the debt of the US is to Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
There are a lot of investments everywhere. You do not. You do not. You bow down to Saudi Arabia because of their investment everywhere. When Saudi Arabia pulls out their investment out of America, America will collapse.
And they have oil.
Yeah. So they control the world somehow using their money. And that's why no one dares to sort of really pressure them and demand from them uh, to have religious freedom.
Mm. That's a big point, like money,
So
because
it seems to me that the golden rule is that he was the golden rule.
yeah, I mean, it kind of is like that.
Only on this episode, my point is really uh, an advocacy to the United Nations to be fair with all religion in its practice anywhere in the world. So if Muslims are allowed to bring Christians to Islam, Christians should be allowed to bring Muslims to Christianity, whether they're in Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Malaysia, or anywhere.
Mm.
Uh, that should be part of the United Nations mandate to allow that. So that religion can be practiced anywhere by any religion. I hope that somehow this episode will challenge the United Nations to take this seriously. Uh, the interfaith dialogue now in Saudi Arabia somehow is an influence by a lot of people who suffered the justice in Saudi Arabia. And there's a big lobby from a lot of countries. Because I'm sure if I was
Mm.
one of the victims, there were hundreds and thousands that were victims. And all of this put together is, I think, the cause of the lobby for Saudi Arabia to be more lenient.
Yeah, I met
Now,
someone that
remember,
was imprisoned in
yeah,
Turkey, I think. He was a speaker
yeah,
at one of the
correct,
military ball.
yeah,
And he was imprisoned for, I don't know, 6 months, I think. And he was a pastor as well,
yeah.
but he was in prison in
So,
Turkey.
yeah, in Indonesia, right, he's still in prison. 13 states. Now, I think in Indonesia, there are states that are really considered Muslim states.
Mm.
And they're not allowed. So, religious freedom, fortunately though, there is a good thing to it. There is a twist to this, Kerry and Ross, because the areas where Christianity is not allowed, like China and Saudi Arabia, are the countries with the fastest growth Christianity. Close, not really
Mm.
fastest, but among the fastest. Faster than those with religious freedom.
Yeah. Which
So
means that
that
even
that
in
that that
even underground
yeah. Now, did you know that the largest Christian country is China?
is China.
China, because China has over 150 million born again Christians today underground,
Wow.
bigger than the number of born again Christians in America
Yeah. I mean, they have more people, but
or
still, for a
any
communist
country.
state, that's a lot of people to be underground Christians.
Yeah,
Um,
numbers in terms of numbers, They're the biggest Christian country.
Yeah. If
How
you look at
ironic
the
is that?
numbers, yeah.
Now, it's in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, in Saudi Arabia, a lot of Filipinos turned to Christianity when they were in Saudi Arabia, when they were born again. They were not born again in the Philippines when everything was free and everything was allowed.
But I
So
think because
sometimes
they
I
found
ask
a
myself, do I
community.
really want the country to be free?
Yeah. But I guess the
Yeah.
community that they got
Well, I think
from,
that, well, I think that, I think there is something beautiful about forbidden.
mm,
I think it challenges some people. It challenges the faith. It challenges the guts. And I don't know. That's something to be studied. Um, because a lot of Filipinos became born again in Saudi Arabia more than when they were free and all the time to attend church. Why is that? Why is the
well,
growth rate of Christianity in China bigger than the Philippines?
well, I mean, because like you said, you were doing something that was not allowed, but for the good. But like the Filipinos already said, like, oh well, as long as we don't get caught, right? Like with making liquor in the rooms and gambling and all that. So I think something about it being like forbidden or secret. I mean, most of the time that's attributed to bad things. Like for example, California, when weed wasn't legal, business for marijuana was high. But now that weed is legal, it's not so cool
Yeah.
anymore because it's how everybody can get it. What's it called? Josh, do you have something to you want to do your what's the point quickly?
I can. So, when you guys mentioned the aspect of, in essence, like why is it so attractive to, other countries that maybe forbid the gospel to be shared? So the thought about it too is that, the alluring thing about these things actually happened over the course of history is the aspect that when somebody fights that hard for their faith, it is alluring, inspiring because they're willing to die for their faith, which means that to the others that don't believe, it actually inspires them to believe because they see actively these people are laying down their lives for this cause, so there must be some truth to that. So you see that actually a lot with, Christians back in the day, like they had a plague, but then these Christians, instead of running away from a plague that was happening, they actually came in and ran toward the plague so that they wanted to help and be there for those who were suffering. So, and these people who saw what was happening, actually because of the actions the Christians took, instead of running away to go toward like in essence, like this death sentence, it actually, motivated a lot of people to come to the faith because they saw this radical pursuit and this love that, individuals were willing to die for. And so
Mhm.
that's part of something that, in essence, can be an attraction to countries like Saudi Arabia or China. Is to see, and even the disciples, one of the main arguments for Christianity to atheists and to individuals in general was that it was not common practice in the past to die for something that's not true, So when it comes to that, like it's important to understand the disciples or these individuals that die for a cause in history oftentimes is wasn't in a culture to do so, to die for a cause that wasn't true. So maybe
Yeah.
in the action of willingly, you know, kind of even in the face of death, choosing to die over relenting the faith, then there is some substance to that that attracts a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I think that's kind of like the main gist, is that like even through the hardship, like clearly Jesus is still working and like God still works, but it's better to kind of like people are get inspired, like you said, of like seeing this, like
And
of people
honestly,
dying.
like you don't even have to talk to them for them to be converted. If they see somebody's actions of willingly going to jail and maybe having the punishment of beheading, once they see that and then they think, oh wow, like individuals just don't do that. So maybe that without even anybody talking to them, it inspires them to,
Mm,
you know, do the same thing and choose the Christian faith.
yeah. No, that I think that's pretty big. All right, I'll pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time that we can discuss pretty much Saudi Arabia
Mhm.
and what freedom of religion looked like, or I guess the not having that kind of freedom back in the 80s and still till today in a lot of countries. Um, we pray that that you touch the hearts of leaders, especially in the UN, uh, to to advocate for something for more religious freedom to all countries so that we can all practice our faith and talk about it freely to other people of other religions and hopefully bring more people to you. Pray for anyone who's watching this. I pray that someone can be inspired by this episode, that they can learn something from what we talked about today. And again, thank you for this time that we can discuss this. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.